Morning, everybody. This is Rick Marr. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to bring Matthew Spero in, who is our speaker from Rivkin Radler. So, Matthew, if you would please allow your camera to see us, if you can.
Rick, you have to turn my camera on.
Okay, let's see here. Kara, are you there?
I am.
Can you turn Matt's camera on, please? Yep. Thank you. So as we're getting that up and running, so our intention this next half hour or so is to have Matthew speak about things that are going on with EIDL loans, coming out of COVID, bear markets, rising interest rates, and what businesses should be doing. Hey, Matt, should be doing to prepare themselves, or more importantly, if they find themselves in trouble, what they should be doing. Now, Matt Spero is an expert, and he is a partner at the law firm of Rivkin Radler. He's located in Uniondale, New York. And Matthew is a business attorney who helps companies work out different issues. It could be anything from the formation of a business to the dissolution of a business and everything in between, which can include things like dealing with SBA loans, difficulties in the business that are causing them to have some problems and how to deal with those things. And in many cases, that revolves around money. So, Matt, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And if you can introduce yourself, because you'll do it better than I do, and we'll jump into it from here.
That's great, Rick. Thanks. Listen, thanks again for having me this morning, everybody. Thanks for attending. So my name is Matt Spero. I'm an attorney here at Rivkin Radler. I'm a partner in the Bankruptcy and Creditors' Rights Department. We have 5 offices throughout New York and New Jersey, and we handle some other matters more regionally and even nationwide. We have about 215 lawyers that work here. So, look, let's take stock of where we're at. First of all, October of 2022, we're hopefully maybe past COVID. The stock market has crashed multiple times. Interest rates are up. Inflation is up. Supply chain problems. There's no more PPP loans. There are no more eviction moratoriums. There are no more foreclosure moratoriums. And now EIDL loans are coming due. So those loans have already started to come due in most cases. So the speculation has been for some time that around this time or soon after this time, there's going to be a spate of bankruptcy filings. Okay, so law firms have staffed up. Bankruptcy courts have staffed up. Lenders will tell you that a lot of their loans are not in default as of right now, but they're expecting that to change. So are there going to be a spate of bankruptcies? Nobody knows for sure, but the speculation has certainly been that it's a very, very reasonable potential option that's coming up. So what we're going to discuss today is 2 things. What to do if your business is having financial difficulties, and also ways to protect your business to make sure that your customers' financial difficulties don't turn into your financial difficulties. And included to that is what to do if you find yourself a creditor in a bankruptcy of one of your customers. So, some of these strategies and talking points were developed over 20 years of experience doing this. And again, we do it on both sides. We represent businesses that are looking to restructure, and we also represent creditors that are trying to figure out how to get paid and, how everything went so wrong. So the first thing is, look, we talked about EIDL loans coming due right now. So the first thing to talk about is, what to do if it's time to repay that loan and you're having some questions, some serious concerns about whether or not you could do that. The first thing is to make sure you have a realistic business plan. So what does that include? That includes a realistic budget. You figure out what it's going to cost for you to continue in the business. And really critically, to make sure that you're working with an accountant, a financial person, a business lawyer. My experience, and maybe Rick, some of this is your experience too, a lot of CEOs are really, really good at what they do, and they know the business really, really well, and they know sales really, really well. But not everybody is trained as a financial expert, and there's no shame in that. But the issue is, a lot of times you don't recognize there's a problem until things are too far gone. So, when you're working with a financial advisor, accountant, business lawyer, you have an objective kind of third party who's kind of looking at things from the outside, who might be able to give you some tips to kind of streamline things, and also to maybe spot if there are some potential, danger signs on the road. If you find yourself in need of money for your business, there are loans that are available out there. Every lender will tell you we're lending, we're lending, we're lending. There are alternative financing options that are available, and they kind of go on the spectrum from reasonable to unreasonable. We always caution our clients to be very careful about injecting any personal funds into a business. Okay, the reason for that is that if the business doesn't survive, you've got multiple problems. You now have a business that's not surviving. You have your salary stream being cut off if the business doesn't make it. And now you've exacerbated your financial issues if you've also drained your retirement accounts to try to fund the business. A lot of times that money that you inject into the business, you don't get back. And unfortunately, the thing that makes so many business owners great, their undying sense of optimism and their belief in themselves, it can also be a double-edged sword, because sometimes that prevents them from seeing things in a realistic worldview, and they might be wearing rose-colored glasses and say, I can put this money in, but it's just going to bridge me and the business is going to turn around. And if it doesn't, you're going to be out that money in most cases. So again, it is very common for business owners to make loans to the business. So at the very least, some of the things that you should be doing if you have made a loan to your business, if that loan has not been documented and papered up, you should have something in writing. It's a promissory note, repayment terms, interest rate if one's available. You should make sure that the loan is carried on the books and records of the company as a loan.
Matt, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just think that's a brilliant point. As owners of companies, a lot of times we think, I'll put some money into the account because I'm a little short this month on a payroll or something like that. And boy, if God forbid something goes wrong later on, that could really come back to haunt you if it's not papered properly. I like that.
Yeah. And listen, especially if the company winds up filing for bankruptcy, or they wind up in bankruptcy, the first thing that a bankruptcy trustee or creditors will do is they're going to look at any repayments of that loan that the company made, and they're going to look to claw those payments back. The argument is, it's a textbook argument, which is, yeah, you put some money into the business, that was very nice of you, but that really wasn't a loan, that was an equity infusion. So when you paid yourself back, you had no right to pay yourself back at a time maybe when other creditors weren't getting paid. So even if you do these things we talk about, which is papering up the loan correctly and carrying it on the books and records correctly, that's just something to give you a fighter's chance. That's certainly not going to be the be-all end-all. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but these are the things that you really need to start thinking about if you're going to be injecting money into the business. For all businesses, this is just kind of good business practice. Keep in close contact with all of your vendors and all of your customers. Okay, it's very important to monitor your accounts receivable. Okay, make sure that you don't have a customer that is paying you later and later and later, and maybe starting to give you what feels like a little bit of a song and dance. Obviously, that's a reality of the business world that happens, but you really need to be monitoring that stuff. You don't want to go deeper in the hole with customers. Sometimes it's possible to, or even necessary to make deals with them, take a little bit of a haircut to get the cash in the door. But, you need to be aware of certain problem customers, even long-standing customers that you think, these guys have a long track record, I'm not worried about them. But, if you see that the payment, terms are getting longer and longer and longer, you need to be aware of that. And sometimes business owners don't even clock that. Nobody's monitoring that. Nobody's watching that until it's too late, and you realize I'm owed X $100,000 or X $1 million, and it's been a really long time. And why hasn't anybody been on top of this? Another big thing too is really to make sure that your, accounts payable, accounts receivable departments and your sales departments are communicating with each other. That goes along to this very point. So a lot of times what happens is, look, we all want to make sales. It's the lifeblood of the business. But, if you're at the same time making additional sales to a company that owes you a lot of money, and you don't realize that, your salespeople are just selling into the problem. Okay, and that means that customer's problem could turn into your problem if they don't pay you. And you'd be amazed a lot of times the lack of communication between the different parts of the company, the different departments in the company.
Yeah, and Matt, just again jump in. I think this is brilliant because especially as small business owners, which most of us are, you know, the owner looks at the sales of the week and says, "Hey, we got to push sales, right?" And not even thinking, boy, maybe we shouldn't be pushing sales to the biggest client where you think that's where the magic fix is. That might be, if they're struggling and you might not know that, that might expedite the demise of the business and potentially having problems paying back SBA, EIDL loans and all that other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, look, you see that not just with existing customers, but also, look, new customers come in the door and we're all very excited. It's great. Here's a new revenue source. Sometimes all that glitters isn't gold. I mean, so it's important, you know, not just to sign these people up sight unseen, but to, you know, kick the tires a little bit, do a little diligence on a new customer. So for example, you can run a credit report on them. You can run a judgment and lien search on them. Are they in litigation all over town because people are trying to collect from them and they're just, you know, they burned their last couple of suppliers and now they're coming to you and you have no way of knowing that these people are, you know, deadbeats essentially. But you could do a credit report, run a judgment and lien search, and maybe get a little, you know, insight into this new customer. You know, you can ask for a financial statement when they want to start a relationship with you. You can ask, depending on the amount of money that you're going to be laying out, for a personal guarantee from the principal. Not always realistic, but it's something that in some situations you can certainly ask for. There are things you can do. You could take a security interest. If you're selling goods, you could take a lien in everything that you sell until you get repaid. Again, it's not a be-all, end-all, but it's just an additional arrow in the quiver in case you find yourself, you know, trying to get paid and having difficulties there. Look, you can ask for payment in advance. You can ask for payment by COD only, especially in the beginning, to make sure that everybody's, you know, off on the right foot. And if that's unrealistic, at the very least, this is something else you'd be surprised to see. A lot of customers aren't even set up to take payments by credit card or take payments by wire, where they say, "Oh, I don't want to pay the extra 2% or 3% on a credit card. I'm just going to take the check." But listen, if you could get a payment, you know, immediately or very, very soon by credit card or wire very, very soon, it really behooves you. I mean, the 2% in the long run, it's a fair trade-off in most instances to get the money in the door instead of calling the person up, checks in the mail, or the check bounced, or the check was misdelivered, or, you know, things happen.
Well, forgot to sign it.
I left off a zero, you know, right. All the plastics that I'm sure everybody.
No one ever adds an extra zero. They always leave off one.
It's funny how that works, right? But I mean, listen, you know, on the credit card point, you know, you can even set up your terms and conditions with new customers that you're going to maintain their credit card on file, and they're going to give you a pre-approval, a pre-authorization that if they don't pay the bill in 30 days, they've given you a pre-authorization that you could charge that credit card. You know, that's pretty big. I mean, and there are some people that if they want to do business with you, they'll offer that up. At the very least, you can ask for it. Offer a discount for an early payment. You know, again, it establishes a good routine for customers. You know, now they're going to get into that habit that they pay you early. It's worth it for a couple % to get the cash in the door. But, you know, that's what I was saying. The terms and conditions, those things that are on your invoices and on your bills and on your purchase orders, you know, nobody reads those things, including, you know, a lot of times the person who's sending those things out. But you can put language in there that's going to give you, you know, some additional protections in the event that you're not paid. So that's something that we've been working with clients on as well. So let's take a look at your invoices, your purchase orders, and let's see if there's some protections that we can build in there to kind of, you know, tilt things in your favor if you're not getting paid. You know, some other things that, you know, businesses don't always think about that they should. And, you know, Rick, in addition to all of his HR services, also offers insurance services. So look, maintaining credit insurance, that's huge. We've had, you know, situations where we represent a client that made big sales to companies, and then the company has filed for bankruptcy. Toys R Us was an example, right? They sold a ton of product to Toys R Us. Toys R Us filed for bankruptcy. Luckily, our client had the good sense to get credit insurance. So they wound up being covered for that. So that's something I would stress that everybody speak to their insurance broker about to see if that's available. Business interruption insurance. Again, we learned, you know, the hard way that certain things like COVID aren't covered by business insurance, but things happen in businesses, and business insurance could be a way to give you a little bit of a bridge to get you through whatever the trouble times are. And even things like should be second nature, like property and casualty insurance, fire insurance, flood insurance, all these things that people don't think about. You have a catastrophic incident like that, and you don't have the proper insurance, that can finish you. So it's critical to make sure that you've got the right protection, and talk to somebody like Rick about making sure you're all set on that stuff.
Matt, you mentioned something in one of our other conversations about putting language on the bottom of your invoices. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, that's some of those things that we talked about, which is like, for example, if you don't pay the bill in 30 days, maybe you've got it set up that you've got a pre-authorization. Maybe you've got it set up in there that, the interest rate's going to start running.
Or a late fee or something, like 5% late fee.
Fees are going to start running.
Okay.
If we have to sue you to collect, you're responsible for our attorney's fees. People think that, hey, I'm just going to ask for my attorney's fees. Well, you only get attorney's fees if it's provided for by a statute, which this situation, a collection case, is not. Or if you've got an agreement with them. So if you have an agreement that says they're responsible for the attorney's fees and they sign it, that's something that's very easy. You can put in your terms and condition, or your invoices. And look, unfortunately, most people don't read those things, but you can really put some language in there that protects you.
Yeah, that's great.
And look, getting back to the good business practices, beware of customer concentration. That's another big one that we see. So, it's great to have that really big customer, but if they are a disproportionate source of your business, well, two things. One, if they go away, that's going to be a problem for you. Two, actually three things. Two, if you're trying to get a loan or some kind of financing, a lender is going to look at the composition of your customers. And if they see that, you're disproportionately reliant on one only, they're going to be a little bit hesitant about making that loan. And the other thing is, if you ever want to sell your business and you're too heavily concentrated with, a few customers, that negatively impacts the value of your business, because whoever's buying is going to say, well, you're doing X dollars in sales, but if you lose this one or two customers, that X is going to be greatly reduced. So why am I going to assume that risk by paying you the full price under the assumption they're going to be around forever? So it's something to look into and to keep in mind. So if you find yourself in a position where, your business is struggling, some things that you need to keep in mind. The first is transparency, with all of your customers. You need to kind of let them know that there's an issue, and to see if you can get some time to, work on these issues. If you've got a line of credit or you've got a loan from a bank, we say all the time, lenders hate surprises. Okay. So they don't want to find out it's a problem after the fact, because, you're going to have a credibility problem with them. And that's the last thing you want with a lender. They'll work with you if you're upfront and you're trying to be proactive and you're trying to bring them into the fold as kind of a quasi partner dealing with this problem. But if it's just put your head in the sand and, default, and you don't answer the phone and you don't respond to letters, that's a big, big, big problem. Okay. You're going to lose your credibility. Same thing with landlords, right? So a lot of business owners, the individual owner of the business is given a personal guarantee or a good guy guarantee. You want to be out in front of that issue with your landlord. You want to see if you can work something out with them, especially nowadays in the COVID world, the post-COVID world. Landlords don't want to see spaces go dark. A lot of times they'll work with you if you're up front. So transparency is really key with all these people. And the other thing just to keep in mind too is that payroll. Okay, so payroll is a big issue. So if you don't make the payroll, you don't just have a problem that your employees are going to walk off the job. In New York, the 10 largest shareholders are personally responsible for payroll that's not paid. Okay, so it's not just the business owes the money. You personally, as the business owner, could be on the hook for that money. And same thing with health insurance premiums. Health insurance premiums are not a loan. They have to be paid over. You're holding that money in trust for the health insurance company. Aside from the fact that, it's just the decent human thing to do. You don't want to leave your employees without health insurance because you didn't pay over the premium. And then, as if that's not all bad enough, we've seen the real worst case scenario, which is people get truly desperate and they start to use the taxes, so they withheld tax, and they haven't paid that over to the taxing authorities, either the state or to the IRS. So, taxes are something that you hold in trust. You're a fiduciary. That money doesn't belong to you. That has to be paid over to the taxing authorities. Okay, if not, again, the business owner can be personally liable, so that's really bad, and the business owner can be criminally liable, which is really, really bad. Okay, so you can go to jail for that, and we've seen people go to jail for that. And it's not always people who are nefarious who are saying, I'm going to steal this money and line my pockets. It's people who run short on cash, and they say, I'm just going to take this for the month or for the quarter, and I'm going to get through and put this money back. Cannot do that. Okay, it's not a loan. So, you can't touch that money because really, really bad things can happen. And, that's stuff that's not dischargeable in a bankruptcy. So that problem's not going away. And then the last thing is, if you realize that you're going to have to close the doors on your business, depending on the size of your business, if you have over 50 employees in New York, you need to speak to somebody like Rick, because there's statutes. For example, there's the WARN statute, which is you can't just close your doors. You have to give your employees, reasonable notice of the fact that you're going to be going out of business. So the other thing too that we see a lot, Rick, is, business owners that just think, what, hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to file for bankruptcy. I'm going to put the key in the door and I'm going to walk away. But bankruptcy is not a magic bullet. Okay, it's not a magic pill, whatever analogy you want to use. So even before you voluntarily file for bankruptcy, you should know that 3 creditors can get together, and if they're not being paid and there's no bona fide dispute as to the amount of their debt, they can involuntarily put you into bankruptcy. Okay, so again, that gets back to the credibility you have with your creditors and trying to, not tick everybody off. You need to be out in front of those problems.
And Matt, I think one of the things that I think is really important, and it almost seems if when a business is struggling, counterintuitive, right? The business is struggling. I'm trying to save every penny I can, but the writing's on the wall, and you think, why would I go spend money on an attorney at this point, right? And I would think that there's a critical point that every business owner has to recognize when they're in a difficult time, is that some of the money that they may need to spend is to hire someone like you, so that they don't make unforced errors, thinking that that they're trying to to save their way out of this problem, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And we see it all the time. I mean, look, we try to keep people out of bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is really the last stop. There are certain situations where it makes sense, but bankruptcy is not all it's cracked up to be. And we see all those mistakes. Again, the business owner that infuses his or her own cash into the business. Or there's another classic. I'm just going to shut down this business, and tomorrow morning I'm going to start a new business called XYZ Company with all the same assets and all the same customers and all the same employees and the same phone number. That's not going to fool anybody. Okay, they're going to come after the new business. Somebody's going to figure that out. That's called success or liability, and they're going to come after that new company. But now you've again kind of killed your credibility, because people are looking at you and saying, this person tried to do a subterfuge to get around the monies that they owed us by starting this new company. The whole thing is a sham.
Right.
So there are things that you could do to avoid that. And we tell people too, the reason why, bankruptcy is not always all it's cracked up to be. I mean, so getting back to the EIDL loans, for example, are they dischargeable in bankruptcy? Generally speaking, they are. However, the lender or the government can come back to you in the bankruptcy and say, this loan really shouldn't be dischargeable. Maybe they think that the business owner lied to them when they took out that loan. Maybe they think that the numbers got a little fluffed when they took out that loan. That could be a basis to say, you can file bankruptcy all you want, but this loan should not be dischargeable. Another thing that happens, especially with EIDL loans and other loans, whether SBA or non-SBA, or whether it's just a commercial loan, a lot of times the business owner personally guarantees those loans. So you can file the company for bankruptcy, and maybe the company can deal with that loan within the bankruptcy, but the business owner is still personally on the hook. So unless the business owner personally files bankruptcy for themselves, the lender and any other creditor that is, that you're personally liable for, can still come after you in the bankruptcy. And, a lot of the SBA loans, not necessarily the EIDL loans, but like a lot of the other SBA loans, will require the business owner to give a mortgage on their home. So in a bankruptcy, you can file a company for bankruptcy, maybe you deal with the loan. The individual business owner can file for bankruptcy. Okay, maybe they can discharge the personal liability on that loan, but the mortgage is going to survive no matter what you do. So you can file for bankruptcy and get personally discharged, but at the end of the day, the lender can start a foreclosure if they choose to, or even if they don't, that mortgage is going to stay on the home when you try to sell it. Okay, so you're going to eventually have to pay the piper. So sometimes people file for bankruptcy and they're shocked to learn that stuff, but these are the things that you kind of need to do. And there are some bankruptcy lawyers, by the way, that you walk in and you say, I want to file bankruptcy. And they say, great, here are the forms, fill them out, and now you're in bankruptcy. And you don't always get into that critical thinking about where this is going to lead you, which is really, really important.
Yeah. And I think, Matt, sorry to interrupt, but I think for those that are listening, look, a lot of people took EIDL loans and all that kind of stuff when we were in the middle of COVID, and they thought, oh, by now we're going to be back to the old days, whatever that is. And their business may not be where they want it to be. And it may not, and it may, that EIDL money might be gone by now and all these kind of things. So I think that for businesses that are coming up on that, if there's any level of struggle, they need to contact Matt as soon as possible, because as he mentioned earlier, the goal is to keep business owners out of bankruptcy, stay ahead of those lenders, and no surprises. It could save your life practically, is the, not to be dramatic about it, but that's true.
Yeah, certainly could save your business life. And, a lot of times there are things that could have been done along the way. We call it, out of court restructuring or a workout. Okay. There are things that you can do. There are options available. You could try to, ways to kind of restructure things, extend payment terms. Maybe you agree to give them additional collateral. There are ways to deal with these problems, but a lot of times people come to us when they're too far gone. And we say, listen, if you would have come in 6 months ago or 12 months ago, as soon as you had an inkling that there was an issue, we could have done something. But a lot of times by the time they get to us, it's sadly too late. And just look, the last thing, we could talk about different types of bankruptcies and stuff, but I know we're running short on time. But the last thing to keep in mind is that, if your business is healthy, thankfully, you could still find yourself as a creditor in a bankruptcy case, meaning, your customer owes you money and they file for bankruptcy and you say, geez, now what do I do? So look, a lot of times creditors get pennies on the dollar in bankruptcy, especially, trade creditors, vendors, landlords. That's just the way it goes, unfortunately. That's the nature of the beast. But sometimes there are additional things that you can do to protect yourself. So, for example, if you're a seller of goods and a debtor purchases purchases any goods for you in the 20 days before the bankruptcy filing, there are additional protections that you can assert. But you have to assert those timely, and you have to know that they even exist. And there are even situations where, listen, you're a creditor, you need to go on notice in the bankruptcy with a claim. You have to file a claim to let them know that you're a creditor. Creditors sometimes just sleep on their rights. They either don't know, or they assume, oh, they're in bankruptcy, I'm not going to do anything. What's the point? I don't want to spend any more money. But a lot of times it's not really a big outlay in legal fees. It's just a question of having somebody monitoring this stuff, because you'd be surprised, even sophisticated large creditors, they sleep on their rights and they wind up getting steamrolled in the bankruptcy, and there are things that they could have done. And the last thing is that sometimes customers that have paid you in the 90 days before the bankruptcy, once they file for bankruptcy, those payments you got in the 90 days, those are eligible to be clawed back in what's called a preference or a preferential transfer. So sometimes, a creditor will get a demand letter from a bankruptcy trustee saying, this debtor paid you in the 90 days before the bankruptcy, but I'll be a nice guy. You send me back 90%. And we'll call it square. And I've seen people get those demand letters and say, all right, listen, I don't want to get sued. Let me send back the 90%. That's a negotiating tactic. You could legitimately own that money, but there are defenses sometimes that are available. So if you get one of those types of demand letters, the first thing you should do is speak to a bankruptcy attorney or a creditor's rights attorney, because there are things that you could do to mitigate those damages.
Hey, Matt, I know we're up on it a little bit of time. We got a couple of questions. So the first one, I'm going to withhold the person's name because it sounds a little personal. And the question is, I do need to go to the SBA because I'm going to have trouble with my EIDL loan payback. How do I approach them? Because it's a loan from the SBA, I'm assuming, directly. And is that something that you help with?
Yes, absolutely. So, look, lawyers a lot of times, because again, approaching the SBA is a good idea. You want to be out in front of the problem, but you're doing it in a vacuum. So what are the other issues that the company is facing? Is there a payment plan? Is there an availability of other options to deal with that problem. Like if you just go to the SBA, listen, the SBA rightfully so is going to demand their money, and they might not be willing to cooperate with you. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But if you do it in the context of, here's my plan, here's how I'm going to get this loan paid. Okay, I'm going to sell off these assets. I'm going to whatever, renegotiate this lease. You could put together a cogent plan to deal with these problems, because if you try to put out a fire as a one-off, that's when people kind of get into trouble. So the answer is yes. We could help put together like a strategy to deal with that problem and deal with other problems.
Got it. And then the next question is, so I have given my company money throughout the past couple of years, and I never have documented it, as you mentioned earlier. Is this something you can help me with?
Yes, the answer is yes. And again,
okay,
you need to go into it with your eyes wide open. So this is not to say like, well, now I'm going to draft up this promissory note that's 5 years later and I'm going to be protected. Not necessarily the case, but at least you've got a fighter's chance. At least you've done some things to kind of protect yourself, to make sure that if there's ever a situation where creditors come after you or a trustee comes after you, at least you can now make the arguments and give yourself something to negotiate with. Otherwise, you just have a target on your back and you're a sitting duck.
Great. So Matt, I think we're up on time. I want to thank everyone for joining. We've recorded this session, so we can send it to you after this session. So if you need to review anything, but certainly I would suggest to anyone that has any sort of questions, Matt is a tremendous resource. His firm, Rivkin Radler, is one of the best around, if not the best. So I think this is coming up on a time where if anyone's even sensing some struggles, they should be reaching out to Matt. So Matt, how could they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my phone number, direct dial, 516-357-3593. That's my direct dial, rings right to my office.
Can you say that again, Matt? Can you say that again?
516-357-3593. Okay, or my email, it's just my name, which is on the bottom here, Matthew with 2 T's, .Spero, Spero, at Rivkin, RIVKIN.com. And that's also our website, www.rivkin.com.
Great. That's awesome. Matt, I really thank you for being so generous with your time. I mean, this is an important topic. I'm imagining your phone is going to, if it's not already, which I'm sure it is ringing off the hook. Your reputation is the best in this field, and your firm's reputation is beyond approach. So I really appreciate it. I'm honored to have you share this with the folks that are listening, and I wish you the great day, and I wish everyone who's listening a great day. And please, if there's anything, even if it's just you're not sure of something that along these lines, please reach out to Matt. He's a tremendous asset. So,
and thank you very much, Rick, for having me, and thanks again to everybody who logged on today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, everyone, have a wonderful day. Talk to you all soon. Bye now.
Thanks.